Amara's eyes flashed with something dark, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "You're overreacting, Chisum," she said calmly. "It's just a journal. Don't make something out of nothing." After the confrontation, Chisum couldn't shake the feeling that Amara was hiding something. Her friend's reaction to the journal had been too cold, too dismissive. Something wasn't right, and Chisum knew she had to dig deeper. A few days later, while she was at home alone, Chisum received a phone call from an unknown number. At first, she hesitated to answer, but something told her to pick up. The voice on the other end was low and hesitant. "Is this Chisum?" the caller asked. "Yes," Chisum replied, her heart pounding in her chest. "Who is this?" The voice paused before continuing. "I don't want to say who I am, but I have information about your husband's death," the caller said. "I don't have much time, but you need to know. Amara was involved. She poisoned him." Chisum felt the world spin around her. She could barely breathe. "What? What are you talking about?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "You need to watch her," the voice continued. "She's dangerous. I can't say more, but please, be careful." The line went dead, leaving Chisum standing in stunned silence. Could it be true? Had Amara really killed Chinidu? Chisum's mind raced as she tried to process the information, but deep down, she knew the truth. It all made sense now: the journal, the strange behavior, the jealousy. Amara had killed her husband. Determined to find proof, Chisum began searching the house for anything that could confirm what the mysterious caller had told her. She felt sick to her stomach, but she had to know the truth. She searched through drawers, cabinets, and even Amara's belongings, but found nothing. Just as she was about to give up, something caught her eye: a small bottle, tucked away at the back of the pantry. The label was faded, but Chisum could just make out the words, "Poison, for industrial use only." Her hands shook as she picked it up, her heart racing. This was it. This was the proof she needed. Amara had poisoned Chinidu. The realization hit Chisum like a ton of bricks, and she felt her legs give way beneath her. She sank to the floor, clutching the bottle in her hands as tears streamed down her face. How could her best friend do something so evil? Chisum didn't know what to do next. Should she go to the police? Confront Amara? Her mind was spinning, and she felt utterly lost. But one thing was clear: Amara had to be stopped. She couldn't let her continue to live in her house, pretending to be her friend, when she had murdered Chinidu in cold blood. Chisum took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and made a decision. She would confront Amara, and this time, she would get the truth. That evening, after the children had gone to bed, Chisum sat at the kitchen table, waiting for Amara to come home. Her heart was pounding, but she forced herself to stay calm. When Amara walked in, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. "Chisum," she asked, her voice filled with concern. "What's going on?" Chisum stood up and placed the bottle on the table. "You need to tell me the truth, Amara," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "I found this. And I got a phone call today. Someone told me that you poisoned Chinidu. Is it true?" Amara's face went pale, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she sat down across from Chisum, her eyes cold and unfeeling. "Yes," she said quietly. "It's true." Chisum's heart stopped. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Amara looked at her with a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. "Because I wanted your life, Chisum," she said, her voice eerily calm. "I wanted what you had. And I wasn't going to let anyone stand in my way, not even Chinidu." Chisum felt like she was going to be sick. How had her best friend turned into this monster? How had she not seen the signs? But there was no time for self-blame now. She had to act, and fast. Chisum was reeling from the revelation. Her best friend had just admitted to murdering her husband, and now, she was sitting in her kitchen, acting as though it was nothing. But Chisum knew that she couldn't let her emotions get the best of her. She had to stay calm, at least for now. If she acted too soon, Amara might do something drastic, something that could put her children in danger. So, Chisum did something that went against every instinct in her body. She pretended to forgive Amara. I don't know what to say, Chisum stammered, forcing tears to well up in her eyes. I need time to process this. Amara watched her carefully, but after a moment, she nodded. Of course, she said. Take all the time you need. I'm here for you, Chisum. I always have been. Chisum wanted to scream, to throw Amara out of her house and call the police right then and there. But she knew that wouldn't work. Amara was dangerous, and she needed to be careful. So, Chisum began to plan. She would go to the police, but she needed to gather more evidence first, something concrete that they could use to put Amara away for good. And in the meantime, she would have to keep up the act, pretending that everything was fine while secretly working to bring her friend to justice. The next day, Chisum went to the police station. She knew that this was a delicate situation. Without solid evidence, Amara might walk free. Chisum explained everything she had found: the journal, the mysterious phone call, and the bottle of poison. The police listened carefully, but their response left her frustrated. They needed more than just a bottle with a faded label and a journal full of personal thoughts to arrest someone for murder. Chisum pleaded with them to investigate further, but they explained that they needed undeniable proof, like forensic evidence or a witness. They assured her that they would keep the case open, but without something concrete, their hands were tied. Chisum left the station feeling both helpless and angry. How could the law require so much when the truth was staring her in the face? Returning home, Chisum knew she couldn't rely solely on the police. She would have to find more evidence herself. In the meantime, she had to act as though nothing had changed. Every time she saw Amara, every time she smiled or helped around the house, Chisum's stomach turned. But she had no choice but to keep up with the presence, all while secretly looking for a way to expose her friend's crime. As days passed, Amara grew bolder in her control over Chisum's household. She started making decisions that Chisum hadn't agreed to, changing the children's routines, redecorating parts of the house, even throwing out things that had belonged to Chinidu. Chisum tried to assert herself, but every time she protested, Amara would smile sweetly and act as though she was doing Chisum a favor. I'm just trying to help, she would say, her voice dripping with false kindness. Chisum felt like she was losing control of her own life. It was as if Amara was slowly pushing her out, taking over more and more of the household. The children had grown used to Amara's presence, and sometimes it seemed like they preferred her to Chisum. This broke Chisum's heart, but she knew she had to keep pretending for their sake. The more Amara tightened her grip, the more Chisum knew she had to act quickly. Behind the scenes, Chisum started digging into Amara's past. She contacted old friends, trying to find out if anyone else had seen this side of Amara before. She needed something, anything, that could help her build a case. But the more she searched, the more she realized how careful Amara had been. There were no obvious red flags, no history of criminal behavior. Amara had hidden her true nature well, and Chisum was running out of time. Amara was aware that Chisum was growing more distant, but she believed it was just grief. In her mind, she had already won. She had successfully inserted herself into Chisum's life, and soon enough, Chisum would become irrelevant. However, Amara wasn't satisfied with just taking over Chisum's household. She wanted to ensure that the children saw her as their mother, someone they would turn to, trust, and love above anyone else, including Chisum. Amara began subtly turning the children against their mother. She would tell them little lies, like how their mother was too busy to spend time with them or how Chisum didn't understand them like she did. At first, the children didn't pay much attention to her words, but as time went on, they started to believe her. They began going to Amara for comfort, asking her for advice, and even telling her secrets they had once shared with their mother. Chisum noticed the change in her children, and it broke her heart. They were pulling away from her, becoming more attached to Amara. Every time they ran to Amara instead of her, she felt the betrayal all over again. But Chisum didn't have the luxury of reacting emotionally. She had to stay calm, stay focused. Her children's safety was her top priority, and if she pushed too hard, she knew Amara might retaliate in ways she couldn't predict. Just as Chisum was starting to lose hope, an unexpected twist changed everything. One afternoon, Chisum received a phone call from one of Chinidu's former colleagues, a man named Uche. He had heard about Chinidu's death and the strange circumstances surrounding it. Uche told Chisum that Chinidu had confided in him a few weeks before his death, mentioning that he had started feeling ill after Amara began visiting more frequently. Amara had no idea that the walls were closing in around her. She continued to live in Chisum's house, blissfully unaware that her actions were being scrutinized. But everything changed one evening when there was a knock at the door. Chisum opened it to find two police officers standing there. "We're here to speak with Amara," one of them said, their expressions grim. Chisum called Amara to the door, her heart racing with anticipation. Amara came into the living room, her face puzzled. "Is there a problem, officers?" she asked, her voice as sweet as ever. But the officers weren't fooled. "Amara, you're under arrest for the murder of Chinidu," one of them said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. Amara's face went white with shock. "What? There must be some mistake," she stammered, but it was too late. The police led Amara away, and for the first time in months, Chisum felt a wave of relief wash over her. It was over. Amara's reign of terror had come to an end. The children watched in confusion as Amara was taken away, and Chisum knew that explaining everything to them would be difficult. But for now, she was just grateful that the truth had finally come to light. Amara would pay for what she had done. The arrest didn't immediately bring peace to Chisum's life. While Amara was gone, the damage she had caused was still very real. Chisum had to face the emotional toll that the betrayal had taken on her and her children. They were confused and hurt, not fully understanding why the woman they had grown so attached to was suddenly gone. Chisum struggled to find the right words to explain the situation to them without overwhelming them with the full truth. In the days following the arrest, Chisum was bombarded with emotions. She felt a deep sense of relief that Amara had been caught, but she also felt immense guilt for not seeing the signs sooner. How could she have let her best friend get so close to her family, so close to her children, without realizing what she was truly capable of? Chisum knew she couldn't blame herself, but the guilt lingered nonetheless. She sought help from a therapist, knowing that she needed to work through her emotions for the sake of her children. Chisum realized that she had been through a traumatic experience, and it would take time to heal. She couldn't just move on as if nothing had happened. But with each passing day, Chisum felt a little stronger, a little more in control. She was determined to rebuild her life, piece by piece. Chisum spent the next few months trying to process everything that had happened. The betrayal by someone she had trusted so deeply left a wound that would take a long time to heal. She couldn't understand how her best friend, someone she had loved like a sister, had harbored so much jealousy and hatred. It was a harsh reminder that not everyone who is close to you has your best interests at heart. The hardest part was accepting that Amara's actions had nothing to do with her. Chisum had spent so much time wondering if she had somehow caused Amara's jealousy or if she had done something to deserve the betrayal. But through therapy and reflection, she began to understand that Amara's actions were a result of her own insecurities and greed. There was nothing Chisum could have done to change that. Chisum also had to come to terms with the fact that her life would never be the same. Chinidu was gone, and the home they had built together was forever changed. But despite the pain, Chisum knew she had to move forward for herself and for her children. She couldn't let Amara's actions define her future. Slowly, she began to rebuild, taking small steps. As the months passed, Chisum slowly began to heal. It wasn't easy, but with each day, she found new strength. The pain of Chinidu's loss was still there, but it wasn't as overwhelming as it had been in the beginning. She threw herself into her children's lives, spending as much time with them as she could. Chisum realized how much they needed her, and she was determined to be the best mother she could be, despite the trauma they had all endured. The children, too, began to adjust. At first, they asked about Amara, confused as to why she wasn't around anymore. Chisum gently explained that Amara had made some bad choices and wouldn't be coming back. Though it was hard for them to understand, they eventually stopped asking, their attention shifting back to their daily lives. Chisum was grateful that they were so resilient, but she knew that the scars of Amara's betrayal would take time to fully heal. Chisum also found solace in her community. Friends and neighbors who had once been distant came forward to offer their support. They helped with the children, brought meals, and spent time with her when she needed company. It was during this time that Chisum realized she wasn't alone. She had a strong support system, and with their help, she started to feel hopeful again. Slowly but surely, she was rebuilding her life, stronger and wiser than before. Life after Amara's arrest was different, but in many ways, it was better. Chisum had reclaimed her home and her family. The house, once filled with tension and suspicion, now felt peaceful again. Chisum began to make changes, small but significant. She redecorated the living room, painted the children's rooms in bright colors, and even planted a small garden outside, something she had always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for before. She also returned to work, slowly easing back into her career. It wasn't easy at first. There were days when the weight of everything she had been through felt too heavy to bear, but Chisum was determined. She had lost so much, but she hadn't lost herself. With each day, she grew more confident, more assured that she could build a new life for herself and her children. It wouldn't be the same as before, but that was okay. Chisum was learning to embrace the changes. As Chisum settled into this new phase of her life, she realized that she had emerged from the darkness stronger than she had ever been. The experience had taught her about the strength of her own spirit, about the importance of trusting her instincts, and about the people who truly cared for her. She had faced unimaginable betrayal, but she had come out the other side with a clearer sense of who she was and what she wanted for her future. Looking back on everything that had happened, Chisum couldn't believe how far she had come. She had survived a nightmare, losing her husband, being betrayed by her best friend, and nearly losing her children. But through it all, she had found a strength she didn't know she had. She had learned valuable lessons about friendship, trust, and the dark side of jealousy. Not everyone who smiles at you is a friend, and not every act of kindness comes from a good place. Chisum's experience also taught her the importance of forgiveness, not for Amara, who had committed unforgivable acts, but for herself. She had to forgive herself for not seeing the signs, for trusting someone who had ultimately hurt her so deeply. It wasn't her fault that Amara had done what she did. And while Chisum would never forget what had happened, she refused to let it define the rest of her life. Chisum made a vow to herself and her children that they would live their lives free from the shadows of the past. They would move forward, carrying the lessons learned but not the pain. As she stood in the garden she had planted, watching her children play, Chisum felt a deep sense of peace. Life had thrown her into the darkest of storms, but she had weathered it. She was stronger now, and she knew that no matter what came next, she would face it with courage and